It's looking increasingly likely that by the end of the summer, the UK will be into its 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. So something's not going right. What's going wrong? Why are people saying, well, has the UK become ungovernable? Is that the situation we've got here? And maybe it is. And if it is, what's the reason for that? Well, Bonkers economics is all about economics, obviously, and that's probably where the answer lies. Because what we've been saying over these series of videos is that actually the UK is becoming poorer. And there's a fairly long video I made a few weeks ago about that, which goes into the details. So here we're just going to look at the bigger picture. But if the UK is getting poorer, if people are experiencing their lives as poorer than they have been in the past, if this generation, the younger generation today, is going to be poorer than its predecessors, if my generation, which was brought up in the 1960s and 70s, turns out to have been the wealthiest generation in British history, and subsequent generations are not going to do as well, if that's the basic picture, then it's very, very hard to govern, because governing for decline is extremely difficult. People don't expect lives to get worse. And if they do, they're going to complain. And if the government can't do something about that, then the government is going to fail. And if members of Parliament think that the Prime Minister and the government are not doing the right things, then they're going to get rid of the Prime Minister and get another one in. And so it goes on. And the whole thing then gets confused enormously around cultural issues, around social issues, around issues like immigration, for example, where people start saying, oh, well, the whole problem is this or the whole problem is that, or we can blame somebody else. And we're not looking at the fundamental issue, which is that the economy is currently structured in such a way that it will make us poorer generation after generation. And so why is that? Well, as I say, there is a long video about this which you can look at, but just in a quick sort of recap, the major issue is that we're not producing enough actual real wealth in the economy. The economy has moved from being a productive manufacturing economy 30, 40 years ago to being what is called a services economy these days. But the point is that the nature of those services is no longer productive in the way that it was. So what that means is that some services like haircuts or restaurants, they're productive, they produce real stuff that we want and need. But services like financial services or legal services or property-related services, they don't actually add value to the economy as such. What they do is they move value around the economy. This is the point we're constantly making, that there's a difference between the productive activity in the economy and the extractive activity in the economy, which is people who are doing things that appear to be useful or appear to be what people want, but actually what they're doing is they're moving money from pillar to post, from one person to another. And you can't live off that because that doesn't produce anything new. And so the more of that we do, and the less of the productive work that we do, the poorer we're going to get, even though some people will get fantastically rich. So you're seeing not only increasing poverty in the UK, you're also seeing a small amount of super wealth, extreme wealth. And we can capture that in this single image here, which we have seen before. This is about bank lending into the UK. And you might say, well, bank lending, what's that got to do with it? Well, the answer is this is the way that money gets into the economy. And money is the tool that makes the economy productive. Money is the thing which allows us to create wealth. So it really matters where that money is going. And what we can see is that very little of it in yellow here is going to private individuals. A bit more in green is going to productive industry like manufacturing and agriculture. And then a huge chunk here is going into the financial markets for financial speculation primarily. And an even bigger chunk here is going into the property market, which is making fundamentally landowners and lenders much wealthier. So this side of the bank lending is all about the non-productive economy. It's all about making wealthy people richer, but it's not about creating additional wealth for the entire economy that can contribute to the quality of people's lives. And this side here, where very little money is being spent, that's the bit which we need to see increase significantly. We need to see much more money going into the productive economy, the economy of making and doing useful things that will make us all feel wealthier. So it's just a little illustration, if you like, of what's going wrong, which most of these images are designed to contribute to. The picture that fundamentally the economy is headed in the wrong direction. It's headed towards more and more transactional activity, more and more financial activity, and less productive activity. And I know you've heard me say this time and time again, and it bears repeating because it's so important and because so few people have really got it. Because the government is still measuring GDP in terms of any sort of activity in the economy. So all of this qualifies for GDP measurement. But the reality is that we only get wealthier when we produce real stuff that improves the quality of our lives. So if we can focus on an economy that produces more stuff, more services, more things that we really want and need, which make us feel wealthier, make us actually wealthier, and less activity, which is just pushing money around the economy to make some people wealthier at the expense of others, then as a nation we will become wealthier. And that's not going to happen until the government rethinks the way in which wealth is defined in the economy. It rethinks the way that wealth is measured and productive activity is measured in the economy, and it shapes a policy which can prioritize the production of real wealth and stop prioritizing this sort of transactional activity which is pushing money out of the hands of ordinary people into the hands of the extremely wealthy. So that's the short answer. Britain is ungovernable because it's getting poorer, but it doesn't have to. And until some Prime Minister comes along who really gets it, who really gets this economic picture, then we're just going to find ourselves into a cycle of increasing decline. And that's sad to say, but it's the reality. And if that happens, then we just get caught up more and more in these sort of culture wars and these arguments about peripheral things like immigration or whatever it might be. We try to find all sorts of reasons why things are going wrong, which are nothing to do with us, but the reality is that we're not producing enough of the wealth that we need to make us feel that we're doing okay. And that's down to government policy, and that means the government policy has to change if a future Prime Minister is going to be successful in any way.